You know, have you ever really thought about endings? I mean, we usually see them as this sad final thing, right? But what if they're actually necessary? Today, we're going to dive into this really beautiful idea that completely reframes endings, not as a loss, but as the rich, fertile ground where new beginnings start to grow. Let's see what we can learn.
So, our story kicks off in a quiet forest. Picture this. A grandmother and her granddaughter are walking together. The girl, she's a little impatient, and she sees her grandmother just kind of listening to a tree. So she says what seems obvious, right? Trees don't talk. It's just a plain fact. A bit of that modern skepticism from a world that's always buzzing with noise.
And then you get this gentle but kind of profound correction from her grandmother. It's not about hearing actual words, you see. It's about learning to see the lessons that are all around us all the time. This one little line, it completely shifts the vibe of their whole walk in the woods. Okay, so lesson number one comes from this old cedar tree. The grandmother points out a scar, a big one, left by a lightning strike years ago. But here's the thing, the tree didn't just stop growing, it grew around its own wound. And that right there is such a powerful picture of a core piece of wisdom. We can grow not just in spite of the harm we experience, but by actually incorporating it into who we become.
A little further on, they come across a falling log. And for the granddaughter, the conclusion is simple. It's a no-brainer. It's dead. Game over. It's just an ending, the final stop in the life of what once a great tree.
But where the girl sees an end, her grandmother sees the complete opposite. She sees a beginning, a transformation. And this, right here, is the central paradox we're digging into today. How the very act of dying can somehow be the source of new life. The grandmother tells her, "Hey, look closer." She brushes away some of the moss, and you see that this dead log is actually just bursting with activity. It's a whole universe of its own. It's a home for insects, it's a nursery for tiny mushrooms, and it's this incredibly fertile soil for new seeds to take root.
And this is the big takeaway the grandmother offers. In the forest, nothing is ever truly lost. Every leaf, every branch, every single fallen tree, it all breaks down, returns to the earth, and provides the very nutrients needed for the next generation of life to just explode. It's this perfect, self-sustaining cycle. So this whole beautiful scene in the forest is really just a powerful metaphor, isn't it? It kind of begs the question, if this is true for a tree, what on earth does it mean for us? What does it actually mean to die into life? Let's shift gears a bit and get into the philosophy behind this whole idea.
The grandmother's wisdom, it isn't just some poetic, nice-sounding idea. It's actually a concept that you find all over the place in countless spiritual and psychological traditions. She's tapping into this really powerful paradox that letting go is the real key to holding on to what actually matters.
Okay, so here's the core definition. It's all about understanding that some things in our lives have to end for something new and, frankly, more authentic to begin. We're not talking about physical death, of course. We're talking about the death of ideas, identities, and attachments that just don't serve us anymore.
This whole concept kind of unfolds through a few key pathways. They're all different ways of looking at the same transformation. As you can see, we've got ego death, surrender, spiritual rebirth, and psychological growth. So let's take a quick look at what each of these really means. First up, there's this idea of ego death. Think about a seed, okay? For the tiny plant inside to ever see the sun, that hard outer shell has to completely break apart. It has to die, in a way. Well, it's the same with us. We often have to let go of our rigid ideas of who we are, our job titles, our roles, our personas, to let a more genuine self come through. The second pathway is all about surrender. This means releasing that white-knuckle grip we have on how we think should be. It's often only after a major loss, or when we hit what feels like rock bottom, when we're forced to let go, that we find this unexpected strength and discover new paths we literally never would have considered. And third, we have psychological growth. To really evolve as a person, we have to actually grieve and leave behind past versions of ourselves. It's about allowing those old, unhelpful beliefs and patterns to just fade away, to make space for the person we're becoming.
So how in the world do we apply this stuff? Well, let's circle back to our story. It turns out the granddaughter wasn't just having a philosophical chat in the woods. She was facing some very real and very scary changes in her own life.
She was right on the edge of what felt like a bunch of small deaths. Leaving a job she knew, ending a relationship, moving to a new city. Every single one of them felt like a terrifying ending, a loss she wasn't sure she could even handle.
And this is where the grandmother offers another absolutely brilliant analogy. She compares two ways of looking at all this change. You can see it as an ending, a final absolute stop, or you can see it as composting, a messy, yeah, but incredibly generative process that turns all that old stuff into fuel for new growth. I mean, this line is just so powerful. It reframes absolutely everything. The job, the relationship, the city, they aren't just vanishing into thin air. The experiences, the lessons, the love, the pain, all of it becomes the rich soil for whatever is coming next in her life. And just to really drive the point home, the grandmother uses one more beautiful metaphor. The caterpillar doesn't sit around mourning the loss of its old life, right? No, its entire being is transformed into something totally new, something that can fly. It's not a loss, it's the fulfillment of its destiny. So this brings us to our fourth and final idea. Dying into your wings. Embracing this whole process, as terrifying as it is really what it means to be fully alive. To be constantly becoming something new. And of course, the granddaughter voices the feeling we all have when we're staring down big changes, fear. She just says, "I'm scared." And it's so real, so human, and a completely valid way to feel when you're facing the unknown. But just look at this incredible response from her grandmother. She doesn't dismiss the fear, she welcomes it. She reframes fear not as a warning sign telling you to stop, but as confirmation that growth is actually happening. I mean, that's a total game changer, right?
And the story ends with action. Armed with this completely new perspective, the granddaughter goes home and she packs that first box. The fear is probably still there, yeah, but now it's mixed with this new sense of purpose. The act itself feels different, less like a painful goodbye, and a lot more like the very first step on a new adventure.
And so that question gets passed on to us. What old leaves from last season are you maybe still clinging to? What belief, what fear, what past version of yourself is ready to become the fuel for whatever is coming next? To put it another way, what in your life is ready for the compost?